So this summer I did an internship at a company called Accudata Service. You can just next one. A little bit about it. It's an IT company that specializes in healthcare. So they monitor computers and software for doctors and other medical practices. As right now, they have 465 agents across 77 locations across the country. And the company started only about 20 years ago with only a handful of employees, and then they've grown to over 20, and they've actually expanded to a billing department. But that's not what I interned at. I entered in the IT department, which is what the company focuses on. So before I even began it, I had to get HIPAA certified, which is Health Insurance Portal. Oh my God, something act. Sorry, I always forget it. But I had to get certified. I had to take a course online before I even showed up at the internship. And so when I arrived for the first day, I was just getting acquainted. I was meeting my coworkers, and I got more HIPAA training because they had some rules that had to do with the company itself. And so afterwards, the second and third day, I went in on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday because it worked my schedule. They had me doing what seemed like a bunch of miscellaneous tasks. First, I was just shadowing a coworker named Holly. She was taking care of the normal service queue, where she would basically take calls. Like someone might say their computer is bugging or it's glitching, small things like that. And other bigger things, I didn't really look into that too much because that's not what I focused on in the internship. You'll see in a moment. And the other part of it was I shadowed a coworker named Ray. Now, Ray was a lot different. He had me doing a lot more hands-on stuff. The first thing he said is he needed these hard drives wiped. I didn't know how to do that. So the thing is, most of this internship had to do with problem solving. So I had to figure it out. I didn't figure it out on my own. Ray helped me out, of course. But he showed me how to do one and expected me to do it with the others. So I went to them, and then he told me a company I needed to call up, and remember, I've never really dealt with IT before, I never dealt with calling before, so a lot of this was already outside my comfort zone, but I was going in there basically willing to step outside my comfort zone. That's why I went ahead and pretty much said I'm going to do whatever task they want me to do, within reason. And so after all that, taking care of the hard drives, he said there's a problem with the fax machine. It's not sending out correctly. And so I didn't know. The thing is, I know a little about that fax machine. I didn't know how to fix it, but I know it doesn't sound like much. It was the first time I really solved the problem on my own. It was when he gave me the little guide, like the little pamphlet that comes with the fax machine and all the options. And I was able to fix it after a little while, just changing a few options, and I tested it by faxing something over to one of our other fax machines, and it worked. So that just felt like a big accomplishment for me. It's not that big, of course, but I just was glad that I had been able to do it without getting any help. So that was the first week. It was a lot of tasks, and yeah, so after doing that, I found out later that was kind of an assessment that week, so I'll get into that later. But I want to go over what managed services, which is what they put me in to take care of. Managed service is pretty much, we put agents and monitors on other computers. Now, if I get some of this information wrong, it's just because I only know the basics of the company and the IT. So if I say something wrong, if I say some terminology wrong, I'm sorry in advance. But from what I know is that we have agents and monitors on the computer that will send over tickets if something's wrong, such as, I don't know, the computer's been offline too long. So it sends a ticket, which is like an alert that we can scroll through on one of the software I'll get to in a moment. And it'll say this is what's wrong with the computer, and then we have to resolve it from there. So I had to get certified again with ConnectWise to use the two softwares, which I'll explain in a moment. And the reason I wasn't sure where to begin afterwards is because I knew how to navigate the software after taking the courses on ConnectWise University, but I wasn't sure how to solve the actual tickets. So these are two pieces of software that I use. Manage is pretty much the center for the whole thing. It's where all the tickets come in for all the employees in the IT department, because they all take care of different types of tickets, whether it be the service queue where they call, or the managed service queue, which is what I was taking care of. Oh, well, I'll say real quick, the queue is pretty much the list of the tickets that came in from other computers. But automate is where I spent most of my time fixing what I went over. So automate is such as, if it was offline, I could go and check to see if the computer was online now. So those are the two software I used. And in a moment, and this is what automate looks like. This isn't a real client, and I'll show that. This is just an example from their website. So this is what happens when you open a computer, you see all this, and when I first saw that, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything, but what I did is during my downtime, when there were some tickets I didn't know how to do, Ray told me, why don't you look up what all these different pods mean? So that's what I did. I researched the pods and I got a better understanding for the interface, so that helped me solve tickets. So I titled this one Learning the Queue because this is something you really have to learn on your own. You can't really, I mean, this is something I had to learn on my own because Ray was very busy. It was one of their busiest summers. And I was very appreciative that they still took me on to teach me these things. But what I would do is I would get a ticket, and then I would immediately research on a forum or on a page to see if they encountered a similar problem. And then I was able to solve more and more tickets to a point where I got confident in solving the tickets in the end. And what I would do usually is I would check in with Ray before solving them. But he took more kindly to, hey, I think this is what we should do, than I don't know how to do this, which is one of the lessons I learned. I'll mention that later. All right, so on the last day of my internship, I called up my supervisor who was in the Tampa office, and I was like, hey, Jason, I have this internship presentation. Can you help me out with a little bit how exactly did I help the company out? And he told me, well, for the start, you actually reduced a lot of the tickets that showed up. And so something I didn't mention is that another thing I found in Congress that I actually had to talk to ConnectWise, Automate, pretty much. And they were very nice when I was asking the right questions. I was certified, so they were able to take my ticket seriously. And I was able to talk to them because other people in the company didn't have time. So I was able to figure out how to download a patch. And I sent those instructions to Ray, who knew how to do it, and Ray was able to download that patch and solve the tickets. And so that's reduced the number of tickets produced. So when I first got there, in the managed service queue, there would be over 500 tickets. I'd say by the time I left, I would only be getting like 10, 20 a day. And they were usually the serious issues. Another thing is background noise. The reason it's different than reduce the number of tickets is because noise are tickets that should have been closed or are not that big of a deal, but they need to be notified anyway because they can be a different type of ticket, such as if it said there's an error on this hard drive, I could say, okay, I don't know, I need to look at the hard drive and make sure it's important. Sometimes it's just a USB and someone pulls it out without safely removing it. Okay, not really a big issue. But what if it's the hard drive in the middle of the computer or something that's really connected and vital? That we definitely need to look at. And so I was able to cut down on the ones that weren't a bunch of a bother, but I would usually refer the tickets that were important to someone who's higher up in the company. And some of those bigger problems I was able to look into. What I would do is I would solve all the tickets I knew how to do for the day, and if there are any tickets I didn't know how, I would simply just do a little research. I don't know, copy and paste the text, see if anyone else has a similar problem. So yeah, there was a lot of research in this internship on these problems. So how's it tie in? I'd only taken my freshman year of college, so I didn't really know how much I could apply my studies, what I learned so far, just basic computer science, physics, calculus. But I realized near the end of my internship that I had been applying, especially some computer science, computer programming, if and else statements. I'm sure everyone here knows about them. Pretty much it's, and that was my problem solving method I used often, such as there's one that said, oh, there's temporary file space on this computer, so I would go, if the temporary file space has gone down to a point where it's not bothering that much, I just dismiss the ticket. Else, I have to look into it further. And then it would keep going down the line until the ticket was resolved. And that's how I was able to resolve a lot of the complex tickets. So next one, calculus. And I'm particularly focusing on optimization problems where it feels like you're given like the bare minimum just to solve it. And sometimes when I was solving those problems, when I first started optimization problems, I felt like I didn't even have enough information. Same goes for some of these tickets. What you have to do is figure out some of the information yourself by looking into the computer, as I said, more research, and being able to piece together all the individual parts of the problem, putting it together, and figuring out what the problem is. Because most of the time, the hard part wasn't solving the problem. It was usually a very easy patch, easy solution. Sometimes the ticket didn't even just falsely reported what seemed like a big error. But finding the actual problem is the hard part. And lastly, I mean, this one is kind of a loose tie to English and biology and other places where you have to do a lot of research. But when you research, you have to, you need to know what to ask Google, because sometimes it'll spit out results, an advertisement, or something that you really don't need. So, but the thing is that you have to usually dig deep into the forums to actually find something that'll help, and I would occasionally would. Alright, so last one are the lessons I learned from this internship. So I learned a bit about IT, but what I mostly learned had more to do with basically a company job as a whole. So the first lesson is basically bringing solutions, not problems. As I mentioned earlier, I would come up to Ray at the beginning, I don't know how to do this ticket. Can you show me how to do this ticket? Can you show me how to do this? I don't know how to do it. He didn't take as kindly to that because he saw I didn't put much effort into it at all. But when I would research it and I would come with multiple solutions, write them down on a notepad like they gave me on the first day to take notes and such, he would say, all right, why don't we try that? And eventually I realized that's the way to go about things, and I got to the point where I'd sit down with Ray and we would go over the managed service queue together. All right, and so that leads me to the next one, is about first impressions. So I didn't know this, but on my phone call with Jason as like the final goodbye, like this is an internship call, he told me that I made a good first impression because I was willing to do tasks that other people wouldn't want to do. And that he said that helped them out because there were some tasks that they needed to be done, like the wiping the hard drives, fixing the fax machines. And the willingness to actually try to solve these problems rather than saying, no, I'm here just to do this, why are you making me do this, was what made a really good first impression. And then there's commitment, because that continued on, because while I was doing managed service for most of the time, there were some times where I would have to be given a task. One time, one of my coworkers, John, he came in with a computer, put it down on my desk and said, hey, Windows updates need to be put on this, and then he walked away. And so I was like, okay. So, I mean, I know that doesn't sound like complicated, but I wasn't sure how to go about it because there was no user on the computer yet. So I just made a fake user, downloaded updates, and it eventually worked out. I was just happy that I was able to do that on myself, because honestly, I usually like to follow directions, but actually doing things on my own really helped me out in this internship. All right. Next is kind of like being a team player. So the thing is that it's one company, it's Accudata service, and there are a couple lessons where I learned that I needed to be a team player. One of them was there was a coworker missing in the billing department, so I had to, instead of doing managed service for 2 days, I had to stuff envelopes for 2 days, which I know it's like, why didn't we do this? But I was fine doing it because I wanted to help out in any way I could. And they were very appreciative of that, rather than me saying, no, I'm not going to do this. So another one that I thought was a very good lesson was, yeah, I made a mistake. Pretty much, I left a task that I should have done undone. I didn't know that my coworker John had another computer for me to do updates on and to download a certain software on, but I hadn't asked before I left. And then afterwards, I felt guilty because he had to do it instead. So I feel like, so after that day, I made sure to ask pretty much everyone, have I done everything that I can possibly do for the day, if I was going to leave early that day. There were some days that I would run out of things to do, and Jason said, if you run out of things to do, that there's really not as much of a need to stay. But the fact that I left early on that day made me feel guilty, so I would usually make sure that everything that I could do was done that day before I left. And with that mindset, I rarely left early. So the next one is, it's all about perception. Now this one can go 2 ways. It's how I was perceived on the first day, how I made a good first impression, how I continue my work ethic, as Jason would say. And then there was a really interesting lesson that I never really thought about. When on one day, Jason wanted me to go on an on-site trip with Ray, actually going to a client to fix a problem. And so we sat down, and basically the problem was the client had a virus on his computer, and we had to back up the data, and because he'd already gotten a new computer, we had to back up the data and put it on the new computer. And so while I was there and we were backing up the data, it was taking forever. It took like over an hour, so I did what every other teenager would probably do. I pulled out my phone, and he said, you shouldn't really be on your phone right now. And I put it away, and I said, but you're not even really looking. And he said, what if he walks around the corner and sees you on your phone? He's paying us to be here. We're on the clock. And that really just made me realize we really are. It's all about perception. If we're sitting there looking at the computer, looking like we're really intensely studying it, it's like the problem. They're going to want our services again because it's like, wow, all their attention is on this one problem. They're a really good company. And that also made me realize another thing. I wasn't Steven, he wasn't Ray, we were Accudata Service. We were the company. And we were representatives of them, ambassadors, if you will. So if you're representing the company, you're representing not yourself. So you have to be very professional and focus on the task at hand. So I thought that was a very interesting lesson, and it's really good learning through experience. All right, so this has to do with managed service, and this is pretty much the managed service is being proactive about things, solving problems before they become too big. Because I don't know, what if there's a computer that's running 100% disk space, and we get a notification that it's running 100% disk space really often? We can call up and say, hey, is this computer running really slow? And they might say, yeah, this computer is running slow. Thanks for noticing, kind of thing. And that really shows off to them, and it shows that we're monitoring even when they don't have to ask about problems. Because the last one, something that Jason also said was under-promise, over-deliver. So I know that you think that you want to promise as much as possible, so make it seem very marketable. But when we promise, we're going to monitor your servers. The way they think it is, okay, if there's a problem, we can call you up and you're going to solve it. What they don't know is that we're getting notifications, tickets from the computers all day long, and sometimes over the night, and we have to take care of those. And that's what I was taking care of. I was taking care of the hidden tickets in a way. And so the thing is that I was being, from the previous lesson, was being proactive. I was taking care of these problems before they even got to the clients, because we don't want the clients saying there's so many problems that need to be fixed. If there's so few problems, they're just going to assume that it's working and everything's fine. Keeping the customers happy is what it is. And that's pretty much it. That's the presentation. The bibliography is on my computer. I'll send it to you when I get a chance. And that's pretty much it. Any questions? All right, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So, I guess what was the most difficult aspect in the entire?
The most difficult. Let's see. There was one. It was near the very beginning. I'd say this it kind of frustrated me because Ray wanted to have me do this bootable computer drive, and I'd never done that before. And I was happy to try to figure it out, but it kept saying access denied, access denied. It was hard to get through because I was really starting to test my patience. I'd say another hard one were these critical blacklist tickets, and they would usually truncate the message. So it would sometimes just be a line at the end of the ticket, and it was originally a paragraph. So all you had to do was figure out, what is this even trying to say? Because one time I remember there was a ticket that just said something, something transit. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. So I looked it up, and what I would usually do is find the event ID, and I would go from one thing to another. And the hardest part was finding the actual problem. And then once I had the problem, the solution was usually straightforward, but sometimes I have to look things up. So that was challenging at first, but I got the hang of it.
So you've done a lot of reflecting on this internship. That's great.
Yes.
You still have 2 or 3 summers to work before you get your degree.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see your experience this summer leveraging its way into a more computer engineering focused internship in a subsequent summer?
Well, the reason I really did this one is because I feel like it's very good experience with computers. I learned a bit about hardware, a bit about software, and I don't know. There's some companies would really appreciate having these hands-on experience rather than just learning in class how to code, how to do really basic things. The hands-on experience through an actual internship seems more appealing than just taking it through normal courses. So, and I wanted to start off as early as possible because I feel like this would open more opportunities for me in my later years. Because this is definitely not going to be my last internship, but I'm planning on applying for them every summer if I can, while juggling the summer credits I need to take. Does that answer your question? All right. Anything else? Oh,
Sure, yeah. I mean, you probably want to hear this.
I probably want to hear this.
Yeah, it's good. It's
Okay.
important. You did it. To have an internship in such an early stage is really valuable.
Mhm.
And I think you saw dynamics of the work environment, which will hopefully give you hints for the future.
Mhm.
The one thing, and this is, because it's an educational environment, it's good to hear it this way. Don't ever say, go back to your perceptions, your lessons learned. Don't ever say, in the way that you did, it's all about perception.
Okay.
Trust me on that. Because even if someone is saying that, yeah, it's good to keep the customer happy, right? The number one requirement no one gets to talk about is the ethical requirement, right? Because they just assume that you're going to be ethical and that you have integrity. They should assume it across the board, right? So the idea that some of that might be lost in translation because we're keeping up with perception and not actually fulfilling that perception and doing the work is something that could be confusing from that state. It might be misconstrued as that we're sitting in front of the computer instead of looking at our phone, but in both cases we're not doing anything, right? We don't want that, right? That's probably the best thing, the best learning outcome that you can have right now, because all the performance stuff comes after. But if you reach that one that no one talks about, topic 0 for your ability to maintain an ethical behavior in the workplace, you could end up having problems finding a job if they were to tell the future of their employers, and people play all sorts of strange games when it comes to that. So that's the number one.
Right. It's just the way I said it that that was wrong. But the actual lesson itself, you're saying, was fine.
Right, not wrong, but learn. You now know that one is a real difficult one to explain, right? And it's best to understand it is that giving them what they ask for, right, in terms of fulfilling the requirements is really what you want to say. Make sure that they're aware that that's happening,
Okay.
right? It's all about perception, is not what you want to say,
Okay.
right? Because that implies that it could also be just trying to tell them what they want to hear, but not giving them what they're supposed to do,
Okay.
right?
Well, but that's not the case.
Right, I know. But that's
Right. So what we're saying is it's the way that I presented this rather than what it actually was.
Exactly, and I think you did a great job. And I think it's just that's the one thing that now you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, I'm always looking for feedback. So thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. You did good.
All right.
You did good.
Guess that's it.